All right, so let's just dive right in. We're breaking down the new U.S. President's inauguration speech today, and we're here to help you figure out what it all means,
Right.
especially what it means for you economically.
Yeah. A lot to unpack there for sure.
Absolutely.
It's ambitious,
Oh, yeah.
to say the least. I mean, the speech proposes some really sweeping changes across so many different sectors of the American economy.
Right.
It's hard to even imagine the ripple effects globally.
Yeah, exactly. Delivered just hours ago today,
Yeah.
January 20, 2025. This speech is jam-packed with some seriously bold pronouncements.
Hmm.
He's promising a golden age for America, but what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
In terms of dollars and cents?
Well, for one thing, right off the bat, one of the most immediate takeaways is the president's emphasis on America First economics.
Yeah.
I mean, this signals a huge shift in policy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He kept hammering on this idea of putting America first, and he wasn't just talking the talk.
No.
He laid out specific steps, like overhauling the trade system with tariffs that are designed to enrich our citizens.
Yeah, this protectionist stance. I mean, think about the impact on prices.
Mm-hmm.
If American companies are shielded from foreign competition, they might raise prices because they know that consumers have fewer alternatives.
So you, the listener, might find yourself paying more for everyday goods.
Yeah.
From groceries to electronics.
Exactly. And it's not just about consumer goods either.
Right.
The president specifically called out taxing foreign countries to enrich America's citizens.
Yeah.
But this could trigger retaliatory tariffs from our trading partners, right?
Mhm.
Leading to trade wars.
Yeah.
That could destabilize the global economy.
And we all remember what happened last time. Trade tensions escalated uncertainty in the markets, businesses holding back on investments,
Absolutely.
and ultimately slower economic growth.
Exactly. And we have to consider which industries would be hit hardest by all of this. I mean, manufacturing, agriculture, tech, they all rely on global trade. Any disruption is going to have a domino effect.
So let's get specific. If you're in an industry that's heavily reliant on imports or exports,
Right.
your job security could be affected.
Yeah.
If you're invested in companies that do a lot of business overseas, your portfolio could feel the pinch.
Absolutely. And, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
The president also announced a major shift in energy policy,
Yeah.
declaring a national energy emergency and vowing to unleash domestic oil and gas production.
Oh, well,
He even used the phrase,
oh, yeah.
drill, baby, drill.
Which is a complete 180-degree turn from the previous focus on renewable energy and climate change.
Absolutely.
What could this mean for energy prices?
Right.
For the environment and for you, the listener?
Well, increased domestic production could potentially lead to lower energy prices, at least in the short term.
Okay.
That could be good news for consumers and businesses facing those high energy bills.
But what about the long-term costs?
Right.
Will this accelerate climate change? And what about investments in green technology? Will those dry up?
Those are crucial questions for sure.
Yeah.
The president hasn't yet detailed how his energy plan will address environmental concerns, so that's something to watch closely.
Right.
The future of green technologies and the jobs associated with them is now uncertain.
So if you're working in renewable energy, this could be a time of anxiety.
Yeah.
If you're a consumer concerned about climate change, you might find yourself weighing the benefits of those lower energy costs against the potential environmental consequences.
Exactly. And speaking of potential trade-offs, the president also laid out a plan for a massive government overhaul,
Oh, yeah.
promising a revolution of common sense and a brand new Department of Government Efficiency.
He really went after government bureaucracy, calling it inefficient
Mhm.
and riddled with a radical and corrupt establishment, his solution. Streamlining processes, shrinking the federal workforce, and generally reducing the role of government.
Right. And this raises a lot of questions about potential economic impacts. I mean, on the one hand, reducing bureaucracy could lead to cost savings and a more business-friendly environment. But what about the services people rely on?
Yeah.
Healthcare, education, Social Security, will those be affected?
And how will this affect taxation? Will a smaller government translate to lower taxes?
Right.
Or will the cost savings be offset by other economic factors?
Those are questions that will need to be answered as the details of this plan are rolled out.
So if you're a government employee, you might be wondering about your job security. If you're a taxpayer, you're probably wondering if this will mean more money in your pocket. And if you rely on government services, you might be concerned about potential cuts or changes.
It's a lot to take in, and we're just scratching the surface here. The president also touched on some very controversial topics like immigration and the justice system, which have their own set of economic implications.
Right.
Let's unpack the president's stance on immigration
Okay.
and what it could mean for the economy. He He didn't mince words,
No, he didn't.
calling illegal immigration an invasion
Yeah.
and pledging to halt it completely.
Mm-hmm.
He also talked about deporting millions of undocumented immigrants already in the country.
Yeah, this is a highly charged issue with some really complex economic consequences.
Absolutely.
The president argues that undocumented immigrants strain resources
Right.
and lower wages for American workers. But many economists argue that immigrants, regardless of their legal status, contribute significantly to the economy.
That's right. And he's also pledged to crack down on the cartels,
Yeah.
labeling them terrorist organizations. This could mean increased military and law enforcement activity in the border region.
So what does this mean for you, the listener?
Yeah.
Well, if you live in a border state, you might see a larger military presence. If you work in law enforcement, you might be tasked with new responsibilities.
And if you're in an industry that relies on immigrant labor, like agriculture or construction, you could face labor shortages and rising costs.
This could lead to higher prices for consumers and potentially slow down economic growth in certain sectors.
Exactly. And it's not just about the economic impact on specific industries. There's
Yeah.
also the broader question of how these policies will affect the overall business climate. Will companies be hesitant to invest in an environment with so much uncertainty around immigration?
That's a really good point. And on top of that, the president also vowed to tackle what he calls the weaponization of the Justice Department,
Yeah.
claiming to be a victim of politically motivated prosecutions himself.
Right.
He says he wants to restore fair, equal, and impartial justice.
This raises questions about how his administration will approach issues like corporate regulation, antitrust enforcement, and white-collar crime. Will there be a shift towards a more hands-off approach, potentially benefiting businesses, but also raising concerns about consumer protection and market fairness?
Yeah, it's unclear how this will play out, but it's
Okay.
definitely something to watch closely, especially if you're invested in industries that are heavily regulated like finance or pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the president's vow to end government censorship,
Right.
which could have ripple effects across the digital economy.
Think about social media platforms, online marketplaces, the entire world of e-commerce.
Right.
How will they be affected by a shift in government oversight?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers, and the economic implications could be vast.
And speaking of complex issues, the president also addressed healthcare,
Okay.
pledging to tackle the chronic disease epidemic and keep children safe, healthy, and disease-free. He also talked about reinstating service members expelled for refusing the COVID-19 vaccine.
This suggests a potential shift away from certain public health measures and a greater emphasis on individual choice, which could have significant implications for the healthcare industry and the economy as a whole.
How will this affect access to care, the cost of treatment, and the role of government in healthcare?
Yeah.
These are questions we'll need to grapple with as the president's policies take shape.
Right. And there's also the question of how this approach will affect the pharmaceutical industry, insurance companies, and the overall healthcare landscape. Will we see more deregulation leading to lower costs, but potentially fewer protections for consumers?
These are just some of the economic questions raised by the president's inauguration speech. It's clear that we're on the cusp of a new era, one that could bring both opportunities and challenges for the American economy and for you, the listener.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's clear that the president's vision for the future is ambitious, to say the least. He's painting this picture of an America that's not just economically strong, but like dominant on the world stage,
Yeah.
culturally, technologically, and militarily.
Yeah. He used some powerful imagery talking about planting the American flag on Mars
Yeah.
and ensuring that America doesn't just win battles, but ends wars and prevents future conflicts altogether.
This peace through strength approach,
Yeah.
it's a recurring theme, and it has some significant economic implications. I mean, the president has pledged to build the strongest military the world has ever seen,
Right.
which means
Yeah.
a massive increase in military spending.
He even went so far as to say that America will reclaim its place as the world's most powerful nation.
Right.
What could that mean in terms of foreign policy and international relations?
Yeah.
Could we see more military interventions potentially leading to conflict and economic instability?
Those are valid concerns for sure. I mean, increased military spending could boost certain industries like defense and aerospace.
Yeah.
But it could also lead to higher budget deficits and potentially crowd out investments in other areas like education or infrastructure.
Could we be looking at a more aggressive foreign policy, potentially leading to conflict with other nations?
It's a possibility, and any conflict, even a minor one,
Right.
can have ripple effects throughout the global economy, you know?
Yeah.
Supply chains can be disrupted, trade routes can be blocked, and investor confidence can plummet, all leading to economic uncertainty and potentially even a recession.
So for you, the listener, this vision of the future presents a complex economic equation.
Yeah.
On one hand, there's the potential for growth in certain sectors,
Right?
like defense and space exploration, and perhaps even lower energy prices if his energy plan succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, there's the risk of increased government debt,
Right.
higher taxes to fund his ambitious plans, and the potential for global instability if his foreign policy becomes more assertive.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the potential environmental impact. We've already talked about his shift away from renewable energy. And a focus on territorial expansion could lead to more resource extraction, potentially exacerbating climate change.
Yeah.
This could have long-term economic consequences, from rising sea levels and extreme weather events to resource scarcity and mass displacement.
It's a lot to consider. The president's vision is certainly bold, but it comes with a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
And as we try to make sense of what it all means, it's important to remember that the economy is not some abstract entity. It's made up of people, individuals, families, communities, all trying to make ends meet and build a better future.
That's a crucial point. The economic decisions made at the highest levels of government will have a direct impact on people's lives, their livelihoods, their hopes, and their dreams. And as we move forward into this new and uncertain era, it's crucial to keep that human dimension in mind.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the president's inauguration speech, I want to leave you with a final thought. The president has promised a golden age for America. But what does that actually mean for you, the individual? How will these economic shifts impact your life, your job, your family's financial security? These are questions worth pondering as we navigate this uncharted territory.
Absolutely. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay curious.